Today we're going to talk all about camera gear reviews and how I stopped watching them and became, in my opinion, a better photographer. And now I don't think I'm the greatest photographer or anything like that. I still got a long way to go, but I think there is a distinct difference between when you're watching camera gear reviews and when you're taking photographs, that there is a lot of discrepancies between the online photography space and actual photography and creativity, representation, whatever, all that stuff. You know what I mean. And this video might come off as very ironic because I do make camera gear reviews myself, but I try my best to keep them as experience-based as possible and not so much technical based, and the things in my opinion that I don't think matter. And so at the expense of over articulating this whole idea of there being a lot of noise on the online space and just in general, I want to talk a little bit about why the overconsumption of gear reviews can be detrimental towards your progress and where you're trying to get to if you're trying to become just a better photographer. So obviously, disclaimer, I'm not trying to discount camera gear reviews or anything like that. Like I said, I make them myself and I enjoy making them every now and then, but I just don't think they're as important as a lot of people think. So the first point I want to make is that a lot of the technicalities don't really matter that much for photography. In certain cases, upgrades and new camera things and features added do matter. So like if you're a videographer or something, like the latest Fujifilm camera getting, I don't know, 10-bit 422 or something like that built into camera might matter for you. But if you're just like me who likes to just take pictures for fun or is just looking to express something visually that doesn't really matter in terms of how many megapixels the camera has or how big the sensor size is or whatever, then a lot of these gear reviews will be going over topics, ideas, and points that don't contribute towards creating better photography. They're just interesting to know, and that's pretty much it. Chances are you know whether that one little tidbit upgrade matters for you or not, and you're probably working on a lot of different projects that most of us are not as well. The important thing to ask yourself is this necessary? Is this essential? Because chances are, if you're thinking about whether or not this upgrade or this new camera or buying this new little feature or something like that or a flip out screen matters to you, in my opinion, if you have to ask the question, the answer is probably it doesn't matter. Oftentimes our brain will lead us into places of thinking because we think of how cool or how awesome it'll be to go out and shoot with this new camera that does X, Y, and Z. And then we realize that maybe we don't really use it or we don't really need it that much in the first place. And then we just kind of ignored that we spent a bunch of money on it. You know, I've done this plenty of times, so I'm just speaking from experience. It's a bit of a buying trap, and the reason why people make a lot of gear reviews is because it gets a lot of views. And that's no shot on them. They're doing what works, and if they enjoy to talk about these things, then that's perfect. But what I'm saying is that as a buyer, and if you're a consumer as well, is to recognize the implications of gear reviews. The only thing that matters, in my opinion, for this is just for my own personal photography and what I'm trying to create and do, is just taking pictures. And I try to keep it as simple as possible because I think the simpler we're able to dumb things down, the more we realize that, do I need this 46 megapixel sensor? No. Do I need this crazy new flip out technological screen? No. And so it allows me to be able to say no to a lot of these upgrades and things and just be happy with what I have. The second thing I want to point out is it seems trite and it seems very obvious, but unless we define it and explicitly say so, sometimes we can forget the most simple things. And is that these technological upgrades or these new cameras, they won't make you a better photographer. This is something we all know, right? People say it all the time. It's the photographer that matters. And it's because it's true. Just because you get a new camera doesn't mean you're going to be a better photographer. You might learn some things and you might have more flexibility. You might be able to do all certain sorts of things. But at the end of the day, if you're a good photographer, then you could take good photos regardless of the camera you have. And reminding ourselves of that, and like a constant reminder to ourselves about that fact, will save us so much money in the long run and so much headspace that we could use instead of thinking about, do I need this? We could use that mental energy more on what can I create better, or how do I improve, or what can I do to, we can use more mental energy towards improving our photography as opposed to upgrading our gear. And we don't realize how much mental energy and mental space it takes up. We're so focused on this new camera or this new shiny object or this new thing that oftentimes we can forget the things that matter, which is just taking pictures and improving in what we want to create. And that's kind of the bigger point that I'm trying to drive home here, is that if you want to be a better photographer, focus on the stuff that matters, which is not the gear at the end of the day. It's a false misconception that getting this new thing will allow us to do things we couldn't do before, which is the whole attractive point of shiny new objects, right? We think by getting this new camera, it's going to allow us to do X, Y, and Z and make us this much better of a photographer. And we know this, there are good photographers through all reams and spectrums. There's good photographers that shoot film. There's good photographers that shoot Fujifilm, Canon, Nikon, Sony. So it's more about finding the best tool for you, not the best tool. The third point I want to make is that yes, there's a lot of good information in these camera gear reviews that people make, and a lot of interesting stuff, especially in my experience or opinion, the camera gear reviews that talk more about experience and less about technical specifications. But we must remind ourselves that the best way to learn about a camera lens or a body is to just use the lens or body ourselves. And we know this inherently because after we buy a camera, we realize a lot of different things about the camera or the lens or the body that we didn't know before and that someone didn't talk about, because our use case scenario is very different than everyone else's. And so the only way to know about whether or not a camera or a lens is good for you is to just buy it, use it, or maybe rent it or something like that and see it in real world. That will save us so much time and stress as opposed to thinking, does this fit or does this not fit? Because chances are we'll only really truly know after we get to use it. And so this brings me to kind of conclude this whole video, is that I've since cut off my consumption of camera gear reviews, and it's not because I don't find it interesting, and it's not because I don't think they're beneficial or helpful, but, well, who am I kidding? I don't find them as interesting anymore, and I don't think they're beneficial or helpful, especially if it's towards getting better at photography. If I want to know more about a camera, I'll read the spec sheet. That will save me so much time and energy doing that, as opposed to watching tens and tens of reviews of people saying the same thing, really. Again, just my opinion. If you enjoy those videos, perfect for you, but I want to kind of break a little bit the narrative that we think we need the latest and greatest to be better. It's just all not true, and I'm kind of done with it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm kind of thinking of better ways to kind of conclude this, but I think that's really the simplest way I can go about concluding it. So anyways, if you have any opinions on this topic or idea, please leave them down in the comments below. Subscribe to this channel for more photography and creative stuff. And thanks for watching as always. I'll see you guys later. Peace.